We have an exclusive for you tonight. Sister Deirdre Byrne is a retired Army surgeon and a sister of the Little Workers of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary here in Washington, D.C. I'm pleased to welcome her back to the program this evening to talk about a lawsuit. She's filed it against the District of Columbia for denying her a religious exemption from the COVID vaccination mandate. She's joined by attorney Howard Walsh of the St. Thomas More Society. Sister DeDe, thank you for being here. Howard,
Thank
you
you
as well. Now, you applied for this religious exemption from the vaccine mandate. It took the health department 6 months to get back to you. What did they say, sister?
Well, the first said, to explain more, which I did in January. And then in February, they sent a generic letter, my name on it, that said basically my religious exemption had been negated, and that I would have 5 days to get vaccinated or lose my license.
Now tell me, first of all, where are you now? You're in suspension, then, basically.
So, yes, I can't practice. I've closed my clinics for the month. I can't see patients, can't help anyone, and just waiting to see what happens.
Now, part of your complaint is you are immune to COVID. You've taken a T-cell test, which would indicate that you have immunity. Why isn't that good enough for the D.C. government on its face?
That's a great question. I've had some peers who are infectious disease doctors who are claiming that the vaccine is far more superior than the natural immunity, but that's not what I learned in med school, and I think it's not true. But many institutions are asking for just your vaccine status. They're not asking about natural immunity.
Howard, we're seeing this body of evidence coming out and new reports almost daily about not only the side effects of these vaccines, but the efficacy of them. And as Sister alluded to, I read reports out of studies out of London, out of Israel, and they suggest that natural immunity is more robust than the vaccine-induced immunity. Why is the government so intransigent on this point of you must get this vaccine even if you already have the immunity in place?
I don't know. I think that's the question. I think it's important to remember here with Sister DeDe in particular. She applied the D.C. regulation mandate has an exceptions, medical or religious. She applied for a religious exemption. So primarily what we're fighting in this particular case, notwithstanding the fact that now we know that vaccinated people don't prevent infection and they get sick. And so, in fact, I think the CDC said that they're allowing vaccinated workers back into the workplace even with symptoms. So none of it makes sense. But as far as where we're today is the mandate she applied properly for religious exemption. She has a deeply held religious exemption. Or request for exemption, and they've just denied it out of hand.
Sister DeDe, two quick questions. First of all, what is that religious exemption? Why do you feel you can't take this vaccine? And then acquaint people with the work you do here in D.C.
Okay. So when the vaccine was first described, there were 3 types, the J&J, which they used aborted fetal tissue to actually make the vaccine.
Right.
The other 2, the American, the Pfizer, tested aborted fetal tissue, and I think it started to come out that people started to become more aware about this diabolical connection between vaccine production and usage. So I decided, I felt God had called me to be a voice for life, for the unborn, and I wanted to stand strong regardless. And we had been following all the things and wearing masks and being careful, just like if it was the influenza.
Sure.
And so that's my religious belief as a Catholic says that, we have to support and defend the unborn from the moment of conception till natural death. And I just felt, even with experimentation of vaccines, I wanted to stay that strong. I wasn't going against anyone else who felt they needed to get it,
right, from
someone who may be elderly, but we also didn't know much about this vaccine. I was a little bit leery on that regard. But what I do here in the city, I do free surgery for the poor. Our community runs a pro bono physical therapy and diabetic eye clinic in Northeast DC. I do an abortion pill reversal ministry, which is a ministry that saves about 60% of babies who women want to change their mind after they've taken the RU-486.
Oh, wow.
You give them high-dose progesterone, and if we get them early enough in the first trimester, we have saved about 60%. This is a nationwide program. But I also work in volunteer at a clinic at Catholic Charities and give a shout out to Sibley Hospital. They let me operate for free. They have actually accepted my religious exemption, and I just have to get tested every week.
But the D.C. government won't.
Well, and that just came out 10 days ago. And on a Saturday night, I received a letter stating I have 5 days, so the clock was ticking Saturday night. So my last day of seeing patients was 5 days later.
Howard, how can this stand where they lift vaccine mandates at restaurants, private venues, concert halls, but they're allowing it to remain in place for a nun doing care for indigent people, poor people, and those who can't receive help otherwise?
It makes no sense at all. But, you know, in addition to that, and pardon me if I missed it, Sister Deirdre has natural immunity, which we've confirmed through tests, which, again, the CDC says is much more efficacious than any vaccine. But and I think you would make it clear she's a doctor and she's not an anti-vaxxer or anything like this. She has a particular exception to these currently available vaccines, and that's what we're fighting, is that she's been denied, her, you know, based on her religious convictions and beliefs, the opportunity to continue as she's done, which she's done all through the pandemic. During the 6 months while she was waiting on their decision, she practiced all over D.C. For the needy and so forth, and now all of a sudden it's an undue hardship for them to extend this exemption.
And we should say D.C. has run afoul of the courts in recent days over these vaccine mandates, mask mandates, shutting down religious worship. The cardinal here in Washington sued the D.C. Government over capacity limits. So they seem to have a tone deafness when it comes to this First Amendment right. I want to end with this. Why did you decide, Sister DeDe, to do this now? And frankly, to make yourself the face of resistance to these vaccine mandates? I
think I felt that I didn't really have an option to either take the vaccine or I quit practicing medicine in D.C. So I thought that was really not an option. So my third option finally was to stand strong, because I feel like I'm just a little tip of an arrow of so many people who are being forced to do the same thing. So I felt like I had to fight for so many others who are, you know, in the same boat I'm in.
We will leave it there. Sister DeDe Byrne, Howard, thank you both for being here. And we will certainly follow this case as it matures, and I hope you'll come back. You can find out more about the work of Sister DeDe Byrne and the Little Workers of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary at littleworkersofthesacredhearts.org.